Today on the Locked On Hornets podcast, we start our player capsules, and who else to start with than LaMelo Ball. We take a look at what went right and what went wrong, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available on all platforms. That includes YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at Walker Mail, at Doug Branson, LOH, and the show handle on Twitter at Locked On Hornets. Last year with Nada, when we did our player capsules, what we would do is we would go with the random wheel of names so we wouldn't have to start on the number one guy, and we just went with, like, you know, all the key players. We didn't include any of the two-way guys. Sorry, Arnie Kuboka. Wow. We just didn't really talk about you. I don't plan on it this year.
Two-way, no way.
Yeah, no way, two-way. That's exactly what I said last year. And so when we put all of those names in, we would just leave it up to the random wheel of names. This year, we're going to go with the order that you want to hear from. It probably makes more sense.
You got to lead with LaMelo, baby.
Yep,
he's the future. He's the keys. He's got the keys. He is the keys. Lead with LaMelo.
Yep, that's right. And so that's what we're doing. We're leading with LaMelo Ball. We're going to take a look at what went right first for LaMelo. Yep. Second segment, kind of take a look at what he could improve on, what did not go right for him, and then maybe talk about just the future, what he needs around him, how the Hornets can best exercise all of his talents to be the best potential superstar he can. And of course, that trickles down into benefiting the Charlotte Hornets. It helps when you have one of the players like that. So let's take a look at what went very right for LaMelo this year, Doug. And the first thing I'll lead off with is the fact that he got his first All-Star appearance. And you look at the names he was included with as far as how young he was, some of the younger players to get their first ever All-Star appearance. Names included like Magic Johnson, I think LeBron James. LeBron James was in there, among the best players of all time. And I think to have that in a Hornets jersey is special. And to see him get that in his second year, we didn't necessarily see him have that sophomore slump. And you've seen that from some stars. I mentioned like Jason Tatum. It's not like he fell off the face of the earth, but there was some decent questions about, a little worried about him, whether he can really take on that full superstar role. And clearly you see when he's done this postseason, you see that from players. Not this year, Doug. LaMelo was special. He got an all-star bid because of it. And now just, all NBA, more team goals down the line for LaMelo.
Yeah, I think you and I were fairly confident at the end of that Rookie of the Year campaign that he was not going to have like a tremendous fall off in the second season. But he certainly, I think, even surpassed my expectations. But none of it was a given. That's what I keep reminding people on the LaMelo Ball experience. None of this is given. It takes hard work from LaMelo, hard work from the staff that's working with him, hard work from his teammates that are also helping. None of it is a given. I mean, there have been plenty of Rookie of the Year campaigns that were followed up by mediocre careers. I mean, I think of Michael Carter-Williams just right off the dome. So
former Hornet. Yeah,
former Hornet, right? Don't remind me of the MCW days. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to go down that road. Let's stay positive here. What went right for LaMelo? I think he was resilient this year. His three-point shot went away in the middle of the season, and he recovered it. He played the best basketball towards the end of the season, and he really took command of the offense in a really special way. Because if you look at his usage numbers through probably the first 10 to 20 games, it was certainly above average for his position, but not astronomical. But then towards the end of the year, the last 10 or 15 games, was all about LaMelo, and he was an efficient offensive player and an aggressive defensive player, and I think there are some improvements there. But overall, he just really took command of the team at the end of the year, and I think that's what went right for him.
Yeah, it did. So it was a great start and a great finish, by the way. I mean, a lot of us, obviously, recency bias. We're going to talk about the last 10 games of the regular season. But if you go back all the way to the beginning, how about opening night where the Hornets get out and just an awful start to the season? It's like, great. I think we're texting awesome. We're going to have to go through this BS again. Yeah. And they come back from a 20-point deficit to beat Indiana, in large part thanks to LaMelo and what he did. He scored 31 points on opening night. He shot 7 of 9 from three-point range, 11 of 23 from the field, gave you 7 assists and 9 rebounds. So making sure he contributes in every part of the box score. Also had 17 against Cleveland, 18 against Brooklyn. They start 3-0 the first month of the year, shooting over 40% for three. And I think that's the second thing I'll lead into. I mentioned all-star bid. You go with the bookend season that LaMelo had from start to finish. I'll go with just the three-point shot in general. This is the thing that makes me as happy as any when looking at LaMelo, Doug. Like, I just think it's so important for your point guard to be able to hit threes and facilitate. And we have a guy that is extremely good. Maybe one of the top 5 passer in the league. You could argue he's number 1, and I would think you would have a pretty good argument. Chris Paul, LeBron James, Trae Young, those are some excellent passers. But the three-point shot sitting at 39% this year, Doug, that's fantastic. Yep. I mean, I'll take 39 for the rest of his career, and we'll get into some of the areas he needs to improve regarding field goal percentage, but I will take 39 for the rest of his career. And you even look at free throw percentage, finishing at 87. The guy who is going to have the basketball in his hands, I want to be a safe player at the end of games who can come up with the big three, who can hit free throws, who can find the open man, who can get his bucket. We'll work on the ladder. But he also showed some of those instances. What went right against Milwaukee? He probably had that LaMelo moment where he's fading away to his left and hits that fadeaway floater, if you will, to beat a really good team in Milwaukee. I just think the three-point shot is so important. And in his second year, he proved that his first year shooting was not a fluke. And it looks like it's here to stay on higher volume, by the way, 7.5 attempts per game.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. I mean, he definitely ramped up the number of shot attempts and delivered. I mean, he's a 20-point per game scorer, and he just got there, but he's a 20-point per game scorer. And when you add 7.5 assists, almost 7 rebounds per game, his rebounding, his offensive rebounding this season was tremendous. He kept, an offense that was already overpowered, just took it into the stratosphere by, delivering those crazy offensive rebound taps that extended possessions, got them second chance opportunities, and turned this Hornets offense into one of the best offenses in the association. Tremendous year for LaMelo. I thought there were some areas that he grew, and he's got plenty of areas left to grow, but he's got the all-star experience now. I thought he really embraced the weekend, and I'm excited. I'm excited for the future of LaMelo Ball.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the weekend, too. So the All-Star bid is an accomplishment within itself, and then to have the type of game that he did, where he's throwing the in-between-the-legs alley to DeJounte
Big
Murray.
Narrative moments, right? I mean, if you want to say, what went right for LaMelo Ball this season, too, is, big narrative moments. In the weekend, he really embraced that. He looked like an all-star. He looked like he belonged, which, is, again, not a given. I mean, some guys go there and shrink, and he did not shrink in the moment. I didn't doubt that he was going to show up, but he showed up. But also in the regular season too, right? I mean, there were games where we saw a little bit of clutch Melo. I think about Milwaukee.
We did.
And I have to mention too, because you mentioned that Pacers, he crushed the Pacers single-handedly.
He did. That was his team.
He dominated them.
Yeah, that's just his team. It's like Chipper Jones and the Mets. LaMelo Ball sees Indiana, and his eyes get big because he knows he's going to feast. I mean, you look at the game on January 26th. He scored 29 points and missed 5 shots on 16 attempts. And had a triple-double, 13 assists, 10 rebounds.
He was a triple-double machine.
He was 8 of 13 on December 29th, where he shot over 60%. Why, LaMelo? What did the Pacers do to you? I don't understand what happened with Indiana, but that's exactly the team that he destroyed. All right, we talk about big narrative moments. There were a lot of good ones for LaMelo. There were some bad ones that we need to address. So coming up on the Locked On Hornets podcast. we take a look at some of the negatives that took place with LaMelo and just some things that he can work on. We also have one soundbite I do want to play for you on the other side. Not before we talk about Shady Rays, though. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' Insane Protection Program. Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every pair. They will send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. So give them a try, and if you don't love them, you'll pay nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com and use code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code LOCKEDON for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 or more pair of Shady Rays sunglasses, backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. More LaMelo coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
This is Locked On Hornets.
We need Mitch Kupchak to throw a party like Sam Presti. Can he party like Presti? And Russell Westbrook?
Yeah, but who are you going to get to perform? Because remember, they got Nas.
They did get Nas. Man, who is Mitch Kupchak getting to that party to perform? Can we get Nelly?
No.
Master P.
Yeah,
I hate you right now.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Doug is in Dallas today, so he probably has about 70% of what his normal setup would be, which I just made that number up, by the way. I'm just going to go ahead and put that on you. I don't know if that's true, but I kind of look at you as a 70% performer today without all of your skill set of the multiple screens. You don't have your soundboard with the embarrassing picture of me in a bee suit on it. So you're 100%, but the equipment doesn't allow you to be the great Doug Branson that you usually are on this podcast.
I appreciate you giving me the excuse. I mean, obviously I have a baby, so that is always.
I forgot.
Yeah.
How could I forget? I forgot that you had a baby.
Yeah, so everyone,
you don't bring it up ever.
Just bear with me. I'm in Dallas right now. I've done a lot of shows this year from a hotel room, and I'm in Dallas right now for the Locked On NFL Draft 2022 show. Catch it on Locked On NFL's YouTube channel. They're doing live coverage, big time live coverage of the NFL Draft. It's a great second screen experience, so check it out on the Locked On NFL YouTube channel. All 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, live coverage of the draft, so check that out.
Yeah, that'll be sweet. So just in case you were wondering why we didn't hear the Eric Collins, LaMelo soundbite a few times, whether you're wondering why we didn't hear a couple of those, it's because he's not playing at home. He's playing an away game, but he's doing a good job. Thanks, Doug. And we'll also talk a little more about LaMelo here. Yep. Real quickly, one thing I think that's an easy pick for what needs to improve for LaMelo is the defensive side. I will say, to finish up on what went right for LaMelo, is you could see him, especially at the end of the season, start to pick his moments where he was going to sneak up on a big guy at the top of the key who was looking to initiate a dribble handoff. And before that could happen, LaMelo would leave his man on his blind side, poke the basketball loose, and then start a transition opportunity. I think of the Orlando game where he did that to Robin Lopez. There was a few other times that he was able to do that, but you can see the instincts are there. And I think the improvement now, which is only going to come, you could be talking about this with any 20-year-old, by the way, but what happens now with LaMelo is picking your spots at the right time. Yeah. So when is the time to leave your guy to go get that basketball, and when is it time to stick with them? Because, yeah, it's a very trick-or-treat type of scenario. You're either going to create a transition opportunity, or you're going to be playing 5-on-4 in a very quick pace that's obviously benefiting the offense. And sometimes he would leave his defense out to dry like that. I think the picking the spots thing on defense is where he is going to improve, and we'll see if that happens and what volume, just his third season in the NBA.
Yeah, totally agree on the defensive end. I mean, he has otherworldly instincts in terms of stealing the basketball. I think he averaged over a steal and a half this season, 1.6 steals per game. And those steals so often turn into transition buckets. It's part of the reason why the Hornets were a much faster team, is because they can create those opportunities on the defensive end. But I don't know that the trade-off was necessarily worth it in every game when you had situations where it would put the defense in scramble mode. And when you don't have that defensive center, that anchor behind them, it makes it all the worse. Like maybe you can tolerate it all if they bring in a defensive center. So we'll have to see if they do that, and then how that, transforms our view of his gambles on the defensive end. But they certainly hurt the Charlotte Hornets often this season. The other thing that hurt was when LaMelo couldn't be on the floor because of foul trouble. And I know a lot of people are going to look at that situation and criticize James Borrego for not trusting LaMelo to stay on the floor with a certain number of fouls in certain situations. And while I think there were a few times that was a fair criticism, I think most of the time James Borrego was doing the right thing, and in that, you want to keep LaMelo or have him available late in games. And so when LaMelo would put himself into foul trouble, and foul trouble that was frustrating because it was often ticky-tack stuff, him making gambles on the defensive end and getting a hand in and getting called for the foul. And I think even more frustrating than that, Walker, was a situation where he would be frustrated with himself for missing a floater or missing a shot or some other error, and he would pick up a quick foul. And you just wanted to pull your hair out and say, what, you're too important to this team to do stuff like that.
Well, and that's, it comes with the offense too. It's the same thing. What makes LaMelo great is also sometimes his biggest deterrent as what could make him reach this level. It's one of my favorite things, and immediately I picked up with LaMelo, like the first 15 games of his career. You see him off of a made basket. Roy Williams, it would bring a tear to his eye because on an inbounds pass, he'd grab it and then just sprint as fast as he could and just create an easy bucket that at least would have been a half-court set. Then there's the time against Toronto, I think, where they were down 6 and it was time to just go home. And LaMelo wasn't ready to go home yet. And he steals the basketball where they're just trying to dribble it out. He hoists the 3 up. It goes in. And all of a sudden, this is a little bit of a ball game again and gives him a chance. And so I think he does that on defense sometimes, too, when you just can't. And some of those frustrations come from him where, all right, I'm going to amp up the energy and I'm going to go at this guy 70 feet away from the basket and pick up a foul that prohibits me from playing the game. And so that's some of the things that he also needs to work on for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to question LaMelo's effort, his intensity. You're never going to question LaMelo's, I think, instincts, but also basketball IQ. Like, he understands the game on a micro level, but the macro level, I think that's where the improvement has to come. Game management, and just understanding situations and how valuable he is to the team and how to stay on the floor. I think is going to be a big adjustment for him, but I'm confident that he's working on this offseason.
The other thing I'll go to, and I brought it up a lot this year, it's finishing at the rim. It just never really quite caught on as much. Now, I mean, he just played really well the last 10 games, and so the field goal percentage overall was up. But, Doug, if you look at the percentage of field goal attempts by distance and the field goal percentage by distance, according to Basketball Reference, if you go to that 0 to 3 foot range, right at the basket, last year he took 30% of his shots there. This year he took 20% of his shots. So he's taking the shots that he's better at. He's taking more three-pointers. We just talked about that volume, and that's great. And he shot a lot better. And that, I mean, you'd rather this happen, right? What happened with LaMelo. You'd rather him shoot more threes and hit at a higher volume. But the percentage didn't really go up. He shot 58% this year. He shot 57.6. It was right about the same. I think a couple of things are going to help with that. One is strength. LaMelo is frail, and so the weight room is going to benefit him a lot. I think that's going to help him with his drives. Like, LaMelo was an excellent ball handler, an excellent decision maker in the paint, and he needs guys to catch the basketball. And when Trez was here, that really helped LaMelo. We talked about that pick and roll game. LaMelo doesn't have this otherworldly speed to blow by guys. He just doesn't. It looks difficult to drive by defenders. And it doesn't mean he doesn't. Like, he'll still be able to get by his defenders sometimes. But I think his strength, his craftiness, his handle is what's going to allow him to get into the paint and beat his guys solo. And those are the things that need to improve. Now, I don't know about his speed. I don't know what you can do to help that speed and agility blow by his defender a little more. Maybe that just comes with natural strength, too, in his legs and his core. But I think that does help his ability to finish at the rim as well as get by his guys solely to benefit himself, not necessarily looking to dish it.
Yeah, well, I think the one thing that helps with that, too, is his three-point shot. You know, if he's hitting deep threes and the defense is now challenged to go out and find him, you know, deeper, then that's going to give him more of an opportunity, more runway to get to the rim. I think that's absolutely right. The one thing we didn't mention on the what went right segment in segment one was that he stayed relatively healthy, other than the protocol issue middle of the season. But he stayed healthy off that wrist injury. But I wonder, you know, how much that is. I don't know, but I mean, I wonder how much that is affecting his desire to go all the way to the rim, right, and take that contact, because we saw him so many times this season pull up for the floater, and the floater, I mean, I would say more often than not was an inefficient shot, and not one that was very effective.
The distance kind of proves that too. That's another thing. Like, if you just look at LaMelo Ball shooting anywhere but beyond the three-point line, those shots have to improve, and that includes his floater, which it's funny because we know LaMelo for his floater. It's a thing, a part of his game, but it is inconsistent. He's not hitting it at a volume at what you would hope he could. Like, if you look at that 3 to 10 range, the 3 to 10 feet out, he's only shooting 39.8% there. You know, that's got to go up. And honestly, that's got to go a decent amount up. If LaMelo was going to have that a part of his bag, he shoots it close to 20% of the time. So if you think about that, you're talking about close to 1 every 5 of your shot attempts as a floater. You can't only be making 40% of that, and that's really going to hinder him as far as an overall efficient player when it comes to scoring the basketball.
All right, so you had some sound, right? You want to hear from LaMelo
I did.
himself?
Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, and so here we are talking about some of the things he needs to improve on. There was a question posed to him as far as what he plans to do this offseason, currently what we're undergoing right now, where he plans to go. And I included a question from Jason Brown of Spectrum News here. So here's a tiny Q&A about what LaMelo's plans are to do this offseason.
I'm going to see what it is. You know, probably have my people come down here. I mean, I live right by the gym, so that's perfect. Just come down, stay in the gym, probably go see my parents, whatnot, something like that. I got to put it together, see what I'm going to do.
Yeah, well, how much time do you actually take away? Because it's obvious that the court is your happy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I touch a ball every day, usually on the court every day. If it's not really working out, I'm just, playing around on the court, shooting with my friends and stuff.
And so, Doug, I think when you talk about LaMelo, it's the first thing Mitch Kupchak talked about. One is when they had him in for that draft meeting, the big story was that he wanted to go play ball somewhere. And Mitch, they're eating dinner, and they're like, all right, let's find a gym for the guy. And he shoots
somebody
until,
get this man a gym.
Yeah, midnight, 1 a.m. LaMelo, the fact that he loves being so close to the gym. He's like, yeah, I'm right by the arena, so I can, shoot whenever I want to. He says he has a basketball in his hand every single day. That's what he loves to do. He loves to play basketball. And that's the kind of stuff you want. I remember Chad Ford talking about this, saying when you look at the guys who you buy into most, of course, talent, of course, this elite skill set, right? You want that. The thing that scares you about, maybe being a bust is when they just don't love the game as much.
They don't want it.
And look, like I don't even care as much. Like, it kind of contradicts some of the things I've talked about. Some guys just don't love playing basketball, but are also really good at it. And at that point, maybe it gets a little nuanced. At the same time, that is not LaMelo.
Well, people are putting that on Zion right now. They're saying Zion views basketball as a profession, and he doesn't have that love for the game, and it's keeping him off the floor.
Yeah, that's not it with LaMelo, I guess, is my point. Like LaMelo doesn't even love to watch it all that much. You know, he said that. Like he talks about how I'm not here watching a ton of games.
He's so much like me. It's great. Like I love being on this show, but when I'm off this show, I'm not watching this show.
That's right. LaMelo just wants to play the game and he wants to practice. And he talked about, you know, he'll spend some time in Charlotte. He spent time in Charlotte last year, and he said, you know, he'll fly his people out. But just good news, like stuff you like to hear. It just, if you had your choice, you might not care if he wants to go back to LA, but I mean, if you had your choice as a team, you'd rather him stay here and work and do all that stuff.
Yeah, we just went through some
helps.
critiques and things that he can improve on, and the good news is that I think he understands those things and will improve upon them because he wants to be great. And that's the one thing you can't really think that is like the one thing you can't teach. And I, unfortunately, I felt that way that they didn't want it about several Hornets draft prospects over the years. And it was always just such a bummer to think like, this person just unfortunately just does not want to be great. And by the way, wanting to be great doesn't guarantee that you're going to be great. But I don't think you can be great without both having, you know, just some of that God-given talent and ability and physical traits, but you also have to have the want to, and that's not missing with LaMelo. And that means that all the critiques that we just had in this segment, I'm pretty confident that he's going to address those and rise to that superstar level.
All right, let's continue with our player capsule on LaMelo Ball. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast, I want to talk about what the team can now do to benefit LaMelo, not what LaMelo can do to benefit LaMelo. Let's get to that in just a moment, not before we talk about Built Bar. You know what helped LaMelo and anybody? Just eating some Built Bars, making sure that you're staying fit. Because if you have not stuck to your New Year's resolution that involves staying fit, I've got something that's going to help you out a lot. I know you like candy bars. Who doesn't? Well, how about I give you something better than candy bars? They're Built Bars. They're covered in 100% chocolate. The limited time flavors are great. The OGs, the staples are amazing, but they're also high in protein, they're low in calories, they're high in fiber, and they're low in sugar. So they're excellent for you too. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. More LaMelo coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
This is Locked On Hornets.
10, Al Jefferson. 9, Anthony Mason. 8, Gerald Wallen. 7, Baron Davis. 6, Dale Curry. 5, Glenn Rice. 4, Muggsy Bogues. 3, Larry Johnson. 2, Alonzo Mourning.
Nice.
Number 1, top Charlotte Hornet of all time, Kemba Walker. Woo! Thank you, everybody. The list is done.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Some of the things the Hornets can now do to benefit LaMelo. All right, I want to try to bring in together the number one need for Charlotte and tie that in with Melo, and that's the center position, right?
Like, get the man. I mean, he said it. He mentioned it in the Slam magazine.
Slam article.
Yeah, the Slam article. Like, he knows what the team needs. Everybody knows what the team needs. Get this superstar a center already.
You know, and look, he had one in Montrez offensively. Those two had some awesome pick and roll games. Like, look, and I even know Nada talked about this. Some people will say, well, yeah, you can't play Trez defensively. He was a problem sometimes there. That's fine. But the energy, the ability to catch the basketball on some really tough passes.
That's all we ask.
I don't know why I felt the pain in your voice there more than anything you've said.
It's all don't have to be an elite offensive player. And we're not asking. I mean, you know, the Hornets are not going to go out there and find Joel Embiid, who is an elite offensive player and an elite defensive player. We're asking for somebody that is competent on the defensive end, that can defend the rim and also catch the basketball. That's it.
So he found a nice pick and roll partner. You could see how effective LaMelo would become when he had that guy. But even looking at this on the defensive end, right? Like, Doug, you can't just go, well, why don't the Charlotte Hornets just have Joel Embiid? Well, why don't they just have one of the best offensive and defensive centers in the league? Once you get that, everything's fixed. Well, duh. All right. Can you get a good center on both of those, like just maybe above average for both of them, make this somewhat of a strength, and a Miles Turner would fit that bill, that kind of bill, right? I don't want to talk about Miles Turner, but you get the point. The thing is, I think even defensively, here we are talking about LaMelo kind of playing that rover on the perimeter, trying to find his opportunities to go steal the basketball. Well, what would help LaMelo do that is if you have a rim protector back there that might just be able to serve as the stopgap when things go awry. Like, LaMelo, he gambled, he missed. Let's see what, Center X can do back there too. In fact, that sounds like a player I'd want to draft, to be honest with you. If his name was Center X, I think that would be somebody that would scare me. But give me the defensive guy that allows you to play more freely on the perimeter, and that will help. It doesn't mean LaMelo can just do whatever he wants. It does mean that he still can find those spots to be risky.
Center X definitely averages, 2 blocks a game, sure.
At least.
There's no doubt about it. I think another thing is, really nailing this coaching hire, bringing in a coach that understands what LaMelo's strengths are, also understands what LaMelo can improve upon, can communicate that effectively, and not try to put handcuffs on the game, and really try to impose, to have that ego and come in and try to impose the will, but can inspire LaMelo and also trust LaMelo and say, all right, it's time. It's time to move forward with this organization as LaMelo as the centerpiece. We're 2 years in. We're confident this kid's got it. Let's go full, no messing around at the beginning of the year like they did. And usage percentage has got to be through the roof. Everything runs through LaMelo. I think that they've got to really nail this coaching hire and make sure that everybody's on the same page about whose team this is and, what LaMelo can and can't do.
So bringing him a center, I guess I don't want to focus, too much on just, hey, get this player, get that player, but bringing back Miles Bridges. LaMelo loves playing with him. I think those two, regardless of how they feel about each other, those two play well together on the court. That they're just a good duo out there when they play against any opposition. And also, Doug, PJ Washington's kind of a sneaky good player alongside LaMelo. The pick and pop, having PJ out there on the 3-point line when LaMelo drives, he has somebody to kick out to. And that's further down. You can kick that can down the road because you don't have to trade him. You might want to get something in return before you lose him for nothing. At the same time, a PJ type player is something that benefits LaMelo, but clearly matching the salary in restricted free agency for Miles, that's something that I think benefits LaMelo. Good news is I really think the Charlotte Hornets are going to do it, and it's going to be a big price tag. It's going to hurt a little. At the same time, I think they're still going to do it.
And look, I would say the challenge to some of these other starters for the Charlotte Hornets, Terry Rozier, Miles Bridges, PJ. Well, I won't challenge PJ because PJ actually has was a really good defensive player for the Charlotte Hornets last season. But Miles and Terry, I would challenge them and say, look, you want to maintain this core, then get better defensively. Because you don't want – I think LaMelo has to be better defensively to be a true superstar in this league. He can't just be one-way player. But he doesn't need to be elite defensively. You know what I'm saying? And you don't really want him. I don't think you want him to be. You need him to maintain energy on that offensive end to power that machine, right? It's sort of the kind of James Harden paradox, right? Everybody clowns on his defense. He should be better defensively, just like LaMelo should be better defensively. But you also understand that you don't need James Harden to be elite defensively because you want him saving all of that energy for his, outstanding offense. So what I'm saying is some of these other players, Terry Rozier, Bridges, whoever they bring in this center position, they need to compensate for that defense and put some of the weight there and not, put it all on LaMelo.
All right, LaMelo Ball, that'll do it. Any final thoughts from Dallas real quick, Doug, that you wanted to finish with LaMelo just on an awesome season? I like the shirt choice today. I need to tell the people that are listening via the podcast, he brought out the LaMelo shirt to talk about LaMelo Ball. Any final thoughts?
I'm thankful every day. I get up and my first thought is I can't believe the Charlotte Hornets got lucky enough to get LaMelo Ball. How in the world are they going to keep him? That's the big question mark that we should always put at the end of these recaps every year. He's on a team option for the next couple of seasons, and then restricted free agency. But I think the organization should be waking up and asking that question every morning. Like, what do we do today, this week, this month, this year? How do we convince LaMelo that Charlotte, just like Milwaukee convinced Giannis, hey, Giannis, Milwaukee's a place where you can win a championship. How do the Hornets convince LaMelo that Charlotte is a city that can actually win him an NBA championship?
I'm going to kind of rehash something I talked about in the first segment, but just looking at LaMelo's overall game this season, I just feel like we're in good hands. When you look at LaMelo, you look at the amount of points that he had per game, scoring 20, the assists and the rebounds, they're fantastic. But even just that ability to shoot threes at a crazy high level, high volume, shoot free throws well. So at the end of game situations when he's getting fouled, he can knock down those shots. It's just everything that I want from a point guard. When we get to the finishing at the rim, getting stronger and all of that, that's going to help his overall game. No question about it. There still needs to be some work done before he is a bona fide superstar right here and right now. But as far as a really good point guard, that's here right now. That is in current place with the Hornets. And you saw him take that step up. That's what makes me feel so good watching what LaMelo did this year, looking over his stats. That's what will conclude today's Player Capsule on LaMelo Ball. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Once again, we appreciate your support. Now, make sure you make your second listen Locked On NBA, Locked On Experts daily covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free. It's also available wherever you get your podcast. Let's continue this backcourt conversation tomorrow. We'll talk about Terry Rozier. Should be an interesting one. So join us again on the Locked On Hornets podcast.